Welcome to sleep with myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. Before sailors named the stars and cartographers taught the sea to sit still on paper, there was a rumor, a hush moving through harbors at dusk. Atlantis was not drowned. It was dreaming. They said the city had fallen softly, like a candle lowered into water, and learned to breathe where breath is a tide. I did not believe it until the night the sea answered my name. The shore was a silver line, and the wind smelled of salt and rain. I spoke only once, Lyra, and the water shimmered as if the syllables were a key. A pattern of pale fireflies appeared upon the waves, forming a corridor of light. When I stepped forward, the tide stepped back. An invitation or a memory. The descent was not like sinking. It was more like remembering how to fall asleep. The ocean closed around me with the softness of a blanket. No pressure, no fear, only the low music of something ancient turning toward me. A school of glassfish came first, moving like handwriting across a page of blue. Behind them, larger shadows circled, manta, whale, and something I could not name. None of them touched me. The water held me as a mother holds a child that sleeps upright. Then I saw the gates. 2 pillars of basalt rose from the seabed, veined with veins of faint light. Between them hung nothing. No door, no chain. Only a lace of bubbles that rose and vanished as if sharing a secret with the surface. On the basalt, an inscription pulsed with bioluminescent script. Remember and be remembered. When I breathed, how was I breathing? The letters brightened. The bubbles parted as if exhaling, and I drifted through. Who are you? I asked. The city's first breath, she said, and its last window. In air, they called me Nemi. Here I am simply keeper. She raised her hand. A small stone lifted from her palm and hovered. It seemed an ordinary pebble, smooth, gray, forgettable. Then I saw the hair-thin fractures, the way a tiny thread of light ran through the rock like a vein. This is a breathstone, she said. The city wears millions of them. Every path, every arch. They hold what we cannot bear at once. What do they hold? She smiled very slightly, as if a tide had changed its mind. The moments the world does not trust itself to keep. She placed the stone upon my tongue. It tasted of rain and first fires and a lullaby hummed by someone I could not name. For a heartbeat, I was a child with knees green from grass. When I exhaled, the memory left me but not the city. Something here grew brighter. Keeper rose. The throne unraveled into drift and swam away like a patient fish. Come, she said, and the water obeyed, carrying us along a colonnade that had lost its roof. Above, far above, a boat passed. Its oars laid dark scars that healed as they formed. We entered a hall where the walls were not walls but curtains, and the curtains not fabric but hanging water. Within each sheet moved images, harvests, storms, weddings beneath lanterns, maps unfinished, names half-written in foam. This is the archive of tides, Keeper said. It is where the sea files what the shore forgets. When I touched a curtain, my fingertips stirred a funeral from a century I had not lived. A woman placed a shell on a grave, then took it back and pressed it to her ear. Music filled the hall. It was only surf on stone. I learned the difference between only and always. Atlantis is not a warning, Keeper said. It is a promise we made to ourselves. When the world grows loud enough to drown its own heart, we return beneath the noise and keep the beat until it finds us again. Then why call me? I asked. Why now? Because you still listen, she said, and every bell in the city answered her. Because land is forgetting to sleep. She turned to the mirror of the drowned sun far below, a coin of stillness in the city's palm. Take its reflection to the shore. Teach them the rhythm that does not break. When the shore remembers, Atlantis will rise, not to conquer, to breathe. The water grew cooler the way air cools before rain. Somewhere far off, whales called. Their voices entered the stone, and the stone replied. Out in the avenues, statues bowed their algae crowns, and gardens leaned toward us the way fields lean to wind. Will I return? I asked. Keeper did not answer. She took my hands and placed in them a small bowl of glass, thin as the skin of a bubble, strong as a promise. Within it lay a single drop that refused to fall or join the sea. The city's breath, she said. Carry it above without spilling. If you doubt, it will break. Doubt what? That memory is kindness. We retraced the spiral. Where I had first been a guest, the city now walked with me. Columns straightened. Lamps woke. The letters upon the gate wrote themselves again and again. Remember and be remembered. At the threshold of the pillars I turned. Keeper stood far behind, small as a candle in a church of ocean. She lifted her hand in a gesture that could have been farewell or blessing. The archive whispered behind her like rain searching its window. I crossed the bubbles and felt air for the first time since water taught me its name. I rose through layers of blue, the dark, the dusk, the milk, the mirror, and found myself upon a shore that had been listening all along. The bowl in my hands held the drop. The drop held a city. The city held its breath. Night was coming. The line between sea and sky softened until the gulls flew from one into the other without knowing. I set the bowl upon the sand and waited. The wave that came was small and sincere, climbed the shore, met the glass, and stopped as if reading. When it receded, the bowl remained, the drop unspilled. Behind me, lanterns opened in the cottages, one by one, like eyes deciding to be kind. I whispered the words the gate had taught me. Remember and be remembered. The sea breathed back. When I awoke, I was not on the shore. I was in the heart of the sea again, but it was no longer water around me. It was light in motion, folding and unfolding like pages of a book made of dream. The bowl I had carried was gone. Only a trace remained. A small glow within my chest, pulsing in rhythm with my breath. The city was calling me back. I followed the trail of bioluminescent fish through corridors of coral and ruins of ivory stone. Each archway I passed through opened like a memory being forgiven. The walls spoke in tides, the currents whispering in languages older than speech. Keeper was waiting at the entrance to a vast cavern. Its roof hung with threads of light that moved as though they breathed. "This is where the sea keeps its heart," she said. "The archive of tides does not remember with eyes, but with motion." The hall was a cathedral of water. Pillars rose from the floor, spiraling like shells. Between them hung thin curtains of liquid glass, each one a window into a moment long forgotten. I saw cities that had never been built, faces that had never been born, wars that ended before they began because someone remembered how to be kind. "Do not look too long," Keeper warned. "The past is a tide that loves to drag." We walked between the streams of memory. Each footstep sent small ripples through time. I saw shapes forming and unforming. A lighthouse built on a mountain, a sky reflected in the belly of a whale. "What is Atlantis really?" I asked. Keeper smiled. "It is a promise we made to ourselves when the world was young, that no memory would be lost, only misplaced." At the center of the archive stood a pool so still that its surface reflected two worlds, one above, one below. "This," Keeper said, "is the first memory." In its depth floated shapes, mountains, clouds, faces, words, but each dissolved as soon as it was recognized. "The moment you understand it, it ceases to be memory and becomes you," Keeper said. I knelt beside the pool and saw my reflection split into two, one still in the sea, and one walking the shore with the bowl in her hands. "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because Atlantis is not lost," Keeper said. "It is divided." She touched the water and ripples spread, forming a spiral like a galaxy. "Every mind is a shore. Every heart is an ocean. Atlantis lives in the space between them." Then she pointed to the darkness beyond the pool. "There is a storm coming. It was born from forgetfulness. The world above no longer listens to the rhythm that keeps it alive." I heard it then, a deep, slow pulse far beyond the walls. The sea was gathering its breath, and something ancient was moving in its depth. "The storm of silence," Keeper said. "When it rises, all that the world forgets will seek its voice again." "What can we do?" I asked. "You must carry the echo of the archive back to the shore. Remind them that to forget is not to be free, it is to unlearn love." The hall darkened. The light within the curtains of memory dimmed, and the images within them grew still. It was as if the city itself were holding its breath. "Go," Keeper said, "before the silence learns your name." She placed her hand upon my heart, and the light from within it flared, a soft, glowing pulse. It spread through the hall like a current of remembrance. The city woke again, its statues turning their faces toward me as I rose toward the surface. The sea did not resist. It lifted me gently, layer by layer, like pages turning in a book that remembers itself. The waves carried me to the shore where the bowl waited still, the drop of light unspilled. I knelt and held it to my chest, feeling the pulse of the archive within me. The sea breathed, and in its breath, I heard the words Keeper had spoken once before. Remember, and be remembered. For days, I walked the shore. The bowl of glass slept beside me, still holding the drop that refused to fall. Sometimes it glowed faintly, pulsing with the rhythm of a tide I could no longer hear. The people of the coast paid it no mind. They had grown deaf to the sea's voice, its warnings drowned beneath the hum of their own noise. The wind that once carried salt now carried smoke. And in that stillness, I felt it, the coming storm. The waves grew restless before the sky did. They whispered of a silence rising, not absence, but hunger. At night, I dreamed of water turning to glass and of voices fading one by one, as though the world were forgetting its own heartbeat. When dawn broke, the horizon was pale and cold. The sea's surface was too smooth, too calm, the kind of calm that trembles beneath the skin of the world. I set the bowl in the sand. The drop inside it quivered like a frightened child.
The first sound was not thunder, but memory breaking. The tide drew back so far that the ocean's bones lay bare, reefs glistening like exposed ribs, wrecks gleaming with salt and time. And then it came. The storm of silence, vast and pale, a wall of still wind rolling toward the shore, erasing sound as it moved. The gulls froze mid-flight. The waves bowed flat. Even my own breath refused to make a noise. It was not destruction. It was forgetting. I held the bowl to my heart. Inside it, the drop of light pulsed faster, brighter, as if terrified of vanishing into nothing. Through the thick silence, I heard Keeper's voice, not as sound, but as thought. Remember, and the silence cannot claim you. I closed my eyes and began to hum, softly at first. A song I did not know I knew. It was the rhythm of Atlantis. Slow, circular, patient. With every note, the air shivered. The tide hesitated. The silence pushed harder. It pressed against my bones, against the pulse in my throat. But the song did not stop. Light spilled from the bowl, rising in threads of gold that twisted like seaweed in the wind. The drop within it expanded, not in size but in presence, until the air itself seemed to breathe again. The silence cracked, not loudly, but beautifully, like ice surrendering to spring. Then I saw them, figures made of mist and memory, walking from the waves. Their eyes glowed with faint blue light. The citizens of Atlantis, returned in reflection. They did not speak. They sang, though no sound left their lips. Their song joined mine, a harmony of current and recall. Where their feet touched, the sand turned to coral. Where their hands lifted, the air shimmered with the color of remembering. The storm paused.
From its center came a shape vast, slow, endless. A wave made of pure glass, inside of which drifted echoes of lost things. Letters never sent, promises forgotten, faces erased by time. It was not the sea's rage. It was its grief. Keeper, I whispered, how do I stop it? Her answer moved through me like current. You cannot stop remembrance. You can only give it direction. So I stepped forward into the wave. It was neither cold nor cruel, only infinite. Within it, I saw everything I had forgotten. My mother's voice, the warmth of a friend's laughter, the nights I had watched the stars without asking their names. Each memory shone and then dissolved, merging into the tide. The glass bowl shattered, but the drop within did not fall. It rose, spreading light through the storm until every lost sound found its echo again. When I opened my eyes, the silence was gone. The sea breathed once more. The people on the shore stood motionless, tears tracing their cheeks without knowing why. The air was filled not with noise, but with harmony, the pulse of a living world remembering itself. Above, clouds parted, revealing the faintest shimmer of light that moved beneath the surface. Atlantis, stirring in its dream. The keeper's voice returned, soft as a tide withdrawing. You have mended the first silence, but memory, like the sea, must always be kept. I knelt beside the waves, letting the foam touch my fingers. It did not sting. It whispered, "Then I will remember," I said, and somewhere far below, the city answered, not with words, but with light.
The night after the storm of silence passed, the shore was so still that I could hear my own heart echo against the water. The bowl was gone. The drop had become light scattered through the waves. But in the distance, beneath the moon's reflection, a pulse remained, slow, ancient, and familiar. Atlantis was calling again. I walked into the sea without fear. The tide parted gently around me as though welcoming an old memory home. The descent this time was different. There was no darkness, no weight, only soft currents of light that moved like sleeping thoughts. When I opened my eyes, the city was awake. Lanterns floated in the streets, drifting like souls searching for names. The statues that had once stood silent were now weeping streams of silver light. And in the center of it all stood Keeper, but she was not as I remembered. Her form flickered between shadow and flame. Her voice was a tide speaking through tears. You open the first memory, she said, but every remembering has its price. She walked through the plaza, and where she stepped, the stone cracked. Not in ruin, but in birth. From the fractures grew small pearls of light, each one whispering a different voice. I knelt and listened. Some spoke of love never confessed. Others wept for names never written down. And others laughed quietly at joys that had never been noticed until they were gone. Are these souls? I asked. Keeper shook her head. Not souls. Moments. Every moment that the world did not love enough to keep. She led me to the mirror of the drowned sun. It was no longer still. Its surface quivered, filling with faces that rose and fell like tides of remembrance. I was the first to keep them, Keeper said. When the world grew too loud, we descended with its memories so that they would not die. Her hands trembled. But keeping is not the same as living.
The mirror reflected her as two selves, one serene and ageless, one tired and cracked by centuries of remembering for others. The storm of silence was not a curse, she said. It was a cry for rest. Even the sea cannot hold what will not forgive itself. She looked toward the surface above us, where moonlight filtered like memory through water. I was made to remember what the world cannot. But in doing so, I forgot how to forget. Her eyes met mine then, vast, gentle, and breaking. Take what is left of me and return it to air. Atlantis must dream again, not remember. I hesitated. How can a city dream if its memory is gone? Keeper smiled. The same way a seed grows, by letting go of its shell. She placed her hands upon my chest. Light flowed from her palms into my heart, warm, endless, sad. Around us the city dimmed, not in death but in rest. Domes closed their eyes. Gardens sank into peace. Keeper's form began to dissolve into currents of gold and blue. "Remember this," she whispered. "Memory is not to keep the past alive. It is to teach the future to listen." When the last light of her voice faded, the city breathed out. The mirror of the drowned sun flattened into calm, and for the first time, I saw my own reflection clearly. Behind me, Atlantis was falling asleep again, but this time in peace, not loss. A whale sang in the distance, its note low and tender. It echoed through the streets like a lullaby for stone. I rose toward the surface once more. The light above was no longer cold. It was warm and golden, like a dawn that had waited centuries to return. When I stepped onto the shore, the air tasted different, as if it had learned to remember too. The people stood in silence along the beach, their eyes fixed on the horizon where the waves glowed with soft light. They did not ask what had happened. They did not need to.
I held a single shell in my hand, smooth, white, unbroken. Inside it sounded the heartbeat of Keeper's song. I pressed it to my ear and whispered, "Sleep now, city beneath memory. The world remembers for you." And the sea answered with a sigh that could have been either farewell or forgiveness. Days passed. The sea was calmer than I had ever known. The waves that once roared now spoke softly, as if they too were tired of shouting. Yet beneath their gentleness, I could feel it, a heartbeat, a rhythm too deep to be mere tide, too steady to be storm. It was Atlantis dreaming once more. I returned to the shore each night, the shell in my hand pressed against my ear. Inside it, Keeper's song never ceased, a slow hum, like the world breathing in its sleep. On the seventh night, the sea began to glow, not with fire, nor moonlight, but memory. Lines of light spread across the surface like constellations reflected from below. The air trembled, and a voice, neither Keeper's nor my own, spoke softly through the water. "Come, there is one breath left to give." I stepped into the waves. They parted like curtains, and I descended for the final time. Atlantis was different now. The city no longer shone, it breathed. Each dome rose and fell as though it slept. The gardens swayed with the rhythm of the deep. And at the city's heart, where the mirror of the drowned sun had once stood, there was now a hollow of light, vast and alive. I felt it calling, not as a summons but as a question. "Will you remember us without chains?" The light gathered into form, not Keeper, but something older, larger. A figure of water and wind, its body woven from the current itself. When it spoke, the whole ocean moved.
"We are the breath of the deep, the first dream Atlantis ever dreamed. It showed me visions, the moment the first tear of rain fell upon the newborn earth. The first child who looked at the sea and called it home. The first love that ended with the promise, 'I will find you in another life.' These are the roots of memory," the voice said. "Keeper carried them too long. Now they return to where they began." The figure reached into my chest and drew out a single pulse of light, the song that Keeper had left within me. It hung between us like a pearl trembling in the current. "If you let this go," the voice said, "Atlantis will sleep forever. But if you keep it, the world will never stop remembering, and the sea will never rest." I hesitated. Both choices were sorrow. Both were love. I thought of Keeper's final words. "Memory is not to keep the past alive. It is to teach the future to listen." So I opened my hands. The pearl drifted into the light. For a moment, the entire ocean stopped breathing. Then it exhaled. The city sighed, domes sinking, gardens folding into coral, statues bowing as if to rest. The sea around me pulsed once, a single vast heartbeat, and then stilled. The light spread outward, gentle and infinite. It rose toward the surface, and I followed, carried by currents that no longer clung to me. When I broke through the waves, the sky was dawn. The horizon burned with soft gold. The air smelled of rain, of beginnings. I looked back. There was no glow beneath the water, no shadow of a city. Only the calm sea, breathing quietly as if dreaming of nothing at all. I lifted the shell to my ear. Silence. But in that silence I felt peace. Keeper's song was gone, because it had done what all songs are meant to do. It had been heard.
On the shore, I found a single stone lying in the sand. It was smooth, gray, forgettable, until I turned it in my hand and saw a faint line of light running through its center. A breathstone. I smiled and set it in the tide. The wave took it gently, carrying it back into the sea. "Sleep, Atlantis," I whispered. "Dream for us all." The sun rose, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to remember itself perfectly. There are nights when I still wake to the sound of waves, but the waves no longer sound like the sea. They sound like breathing, slow, steady, alive. The city is gone, yet it lingers in the rhythm of the world. Every ripple upon the water, every whisper of wind through shell, carries a trace of the dream that was Atlantis. I walk the shore each morning before the sun rises, and the horizon glows faintly, as though something beneath it still watches. The villagers say the tides have changed. The storms no longer come without warning, and the fish return to shores long barren. They think it is nature healing. But I know better. It is memory, gentle, invisible, patient, returning balance to the waking world. Each wave leaves a pattern upon the sand, a spiral like those carved in the plazas of the drowned city. When the wind passes over them, it almost sounds like a voice murmuring, "We are still here." One morning, as dawn touched the sea, I found something in the surf, a small glass fragment curved like a tear. When I held it to the light, it shimmered with faint colors, the same glow that had once lit the domes of Atlantis.
Within it moved a single bubble. It pulsed softly, as though alive. I pressed it to my ear, expecting silence. But what I heard was neither keeper nor the sea. It was laughter, childlike, endless, free. Atlantis was dreaming again. I built a small shrine at the edge of the cliffs. Not a monument, but a memory. I placed shells, stones, and driftwood shaped by the waves, offerings to the dream beneath the world. Each night, I light a single candle and whisper, "Sleep with kindness, breathe with love." The flame never dies, even when the wind is strong. It burns blue, like the city once did. And when I sleep, I see her, Keeper, walking through fields of coral that grow not beneath the sea, but beneath stars. In her hands she carries no crown, no light, no burden, only a single seed, glowing faintly, pulsing with the rhythm of the deep. "This is Atlantis now," she says, "not a place, a promise." She plants it in the sky, and from it blooms a new constellation, a spiral of silver fire, shining above the horizon. The city that learned to rest will guide those who still wander, she says. And every dreamer who listens to the sea will hear its heart. When I awaken, the sky is always different. Some nights the stars form a shape like the mirror of the drowned sun. Other nights they drift in slow, glowing tides. But one thing never changes: the faint reflection of light upon the waves, as though something beneath still breathes. Atlantis sleeps, but its dream endures. The world has learned to remember gently, and I have learned that all endings are simply beginnings waiting to breathe again. I sit upon the shore and whisper one last time, "Remember, and be remembered." The sea answers not with sound, but with light. A ripple moves through the horizon, soft, endless, and kind. And as the first sun of morning rises, the reflection of the deep city glimmers once more, not as stone but as breath.